On October 16, 2011, the unthinkable happened. Dan Wheldon, the celebrated British motor racing driver, tragically lost his life in a horrific crash during the Las Vegas Indy 300. But this was a man who had lived his life on the edge, pushing the boundaries of speed and endurance. Just months earlier, he had secured his second Indianapolis 500 victory in a heart-stopping finish. From his humble beginnings at age 8, Wheldon had risen to the very heights of motorsports, leaving a mark we all see in the racing world. This is the story of a legend. In the cozy village of Emberton, located deep in the English hills, lived a guy named Dan Wheldon. Back in '78, when most 8-year-olds were into cartoons and backyard play, Dan was all about go-karts. Yep, those little speedy things that make you feel like a race car driver. But Dan wasn't simply watching. He was the youngster racing across the fields in his rickety cart. They dubbed him the Lionheart, not for fun, but because he had the courage and burning ambition to be the best. As time passed, karting evolved from a hobby to a full-fledged obsession. By age 10, Dan had been a regular at national karting events, winning awards left and right. But Dan had bigger dreams. He didn't want to be the local hero. He wanted to conquer the top-tier IndyCar racing scene in the United States. So, with dreams in his suitcase and determination in his heart, he flew across the Atlantic, ready to take on the land of opportunity. His first challenge was the US F2000 National Championship, which was, well, call it a really tough gig. It was like a battleground for young racers, all hungry to make it big. But Dan loved a good challenge. He raced through different conditions, outsmarted his opponents, and claimed victory after victory. His fearless style and laser-like focus made him a real force. After mastering the US F2000 scene, Dan decided to shoot higher, this time, the Toyota Atlantic Championship. This was the big league for up-and-coming racers, with faster cars, tougher competition, and more pressure than ever. But Dan faced it head-on. He handled the powerful machines like a pro, strategized his way through tight corners, and pushed forward with unwavering determination. Every race was like a crash course for him, preparing for the final test. IndyCar. Well, spoiler alert, he'd soon become an IndyCar champion. But how did he make it to the top? Well, having conquered the stepping stones of US F2000 and Toyota Atlantic, Dan Wheldon was finally knocking on the door of his dream, IndyCar. It was another league of high-end machines, legendary tracks like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and drivers who were the best of the best. But Dan wasn't intimidated. He was ready to take the wheel. His first shot at IndyCar came in 2002 with Panther Racing, a team known for its aggressive style. It wasn't a smooth ride, though. Why? Well, imagine being a rookie surrounded by seasoned veterans who knew every inch of the track. There were crashes, moments of doubt, and defeats that stung. But again, Dan wasn't one to throw in the towel. He learned from every bump and bruise, analyzed every mistake, and came back stronger each time. His raw talent and determination were hard to miss, and soon, people started taking notice. The following year, his talent drew the attention of Andretti Green Racing, AGR, a top-tier team with a winning record. This was a huge step up for Dan, with the opportunity to race alongside some of the sport's biggest personalities. The strain was on, but Dan flourished in. He pushed himself to the peak, absorbing lessons from his veteran teammates while demonstrating his own distinct driving style. His desire to win was contagious, and his upbeat attitude inspired the entire team. The 2004 season was the turning point for Dan. He finally landed his first podium finish, a sweet reward that only made him hungrier for more. He went on to win 3 races that year, proving his rapid development and raw talent. But the ultimate prize, the IndyCar Championship, just slipped out of his grasp. He finished second overall, which was a huge accomplishment, but also left him wanting more. However, 2005 was the year Dan truly stepped into the spotlight. He was hungry, determined, and ready to dominate. With a powerful car under him at AGR, he launched a full-on attack on the championship. It was a season for the record books. Dan controlled the tracks like the master he was, showcasing his incredible car control and strategic thinking. After this, victories piled up, each one a celebration of his unwavering focus and relentless chase of excellence. The Indianapolis 500, IndyCar's biggest event, was the season's finest moment. Think of it this way. You came from almost nowhere, and now you are facing off against racing icons. We can't emphasize enough how great the race was. But in the end, Dan reached the finish line first, and of course, the crowd erupted in cheers. He had won the Indy 500, cemented his place in racing history, and become a legend. However, the 2005 season was not solely about Indianapolis. Dan went on to win a record number of races that year, capturing the coveted IndyCar Series Drivers' Championship. He was the talk of the town, a champion who had risen from a little village to the summit of open-wheel competition. In 2006, he demonstrated his adaptability by co-winning the grueling 24 Hours of Daytona, a 24-hour endurance race that challenged his ability to adapt and flourish under pressure. After an amazing 2005 season, Dan Wheldon's racing career kept getting better. He changed teams, proving how good he was in different racing setups. Even though he didn't win any championships in the next years, his love for racing never faded. He stayed a strong competitor, always a threat on the track. Then came 2011, a year that all of us fans will never forget. Dan Wheldon returned to the iconic Indianapolis 500 winners' circle, and it was an emotional experience. Think of the crowd's cheers, the checkered flag waving, and Dan, overjoyed, getting out of his wheels. This wasn't just a win. It was a comeback that demonstrated his unshakable spirit. He won the Indy 500 for the second time, holding up the special Borg-Warner trophy. But this joyful victory turned sad later that year. Dan couldn't resist the urge to race in a dangerous Las Vegas IndyCar event. Obviously, people had a bad feeling about it. And on a fateful day in October, a big crash happened. And unfortunately, Dan was caught in it. And it got worse, as he didn't make it out of it. He was only 33, and his promising life ended too soon. The loss of Dan Wheldon deeply affected the racing world. Fans, other racers, and teams all paid tribute to him. People didn't just admire his skill, they loved his friendly nature, his fair play, and how much he cared about his family. Dan, the champion racer, was also a loving husband and dad, someone who cherished every moment with his family. Dan Wheldon's legacy still inspires new racers today. He left a strong message. If you work hard, believe in yourself, and have a big heart, you can achieve your dreams. Even after his passing, he received the Most Popular Driver award in the IndyCar Series. A perfect tribute to the guy who won fans over with his racing skills and genuine personality. In 2019, Dan was added to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame, a lasting honor in the world of racing. A good way to honor the legend, don't you think? If you think so, check out my other videos. See you there.